Alright guys, in this video we're going to look at aligning elements, we're going to look at aligning text, and we're going to look at auto margin. So let's create a new file here called 07, and I'm just going to call this float_align.html. And let's throw in our tags here, head body tags, and we'll say float and align. Style. Okay, and all I want here is 3 divs with the class of box, but I want them to have separate IDs so that we can target them separately as well. Now with Emmet, I don't think I showed you this. If we want to add an ID and a class, we can do like ID box1 class box. Okay, we can do that. And then I'm just going to put an H3 in here, and I'm just going to say heading, doesn't really matter. And then we'll do lorem 20. Okay, and we're going to copy this down 2 more times and just change the ID to 2 and then 3. Okay, so we'll save that and let's open this with live server. Okay, now first thing I want to show you is how to center your content or your layout, because in just about all cases, every website you go to, it's in the center. It's not over to the left like this. Maybe in like the 90s or early 2000s it was, but now your stuff is going to be in the middle. So to do that is pretty easy. We just need to have a container class or ID or container element, I should say, and then we need to add a width to it and set the margin to auto. Okay, if we set the margin to auto, it's going to add the same amount of margin on both sides, pushing it into the middle. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going to wrap this in a class called container. Okay, you'll see the class name container often, container or wrap or wrapper, and then we're going to grab everything here and put it inside the container. Okay, let me just fix this up a little bit. Alright, so up here in our CSS, let's do container. And let's set a width of, now it's up to you how wide you want your layout to be. I'm going to do 960, which is kind of narrow. And then actually we'll just do that for now. And if we go back to our if we go back to our content and I open up our Chrome tools and take a look, you'll see that we want to go to the container. You'll see that the blue, it ends at 960 pixels. Okay, that's 960 wide. Now to move it to the middle is very simple. All we have to do is add in margin auto. If I save that and we go back, now you'll see it's in the middle. Okay, and the orange part on the sides is the margin. Okay, and notice it's the same. It's even on both sides. That's what happens if you do margin auto. Now, if you want to move it down a little bit, if you want margin on the top and bottom, you could do something like this. You could say 30 pixels for top and bottom, auto on the left and right. And now, if I hover over it, you'll see that there's 30 on the top and bottom. Okay, now there's an issue with using just width in this case. So let me show you that. It has to do with responsive design. You want to do all you can to make your site look decent on mobile devices, and we're going to get more into this later. But if I go down like this, like if we were to view this on a mobile device, you can't even read the text. You have this scroll bar, which is just horrible. We want all the text to display here. So to fix that is very simple. All we have to do is go from width to using max width. So if I save that and we go back, now all the text is there, okay, regardless of the screen size. And then once I get to 960, it's gonna stop. That's the boundary, because we set a max width of 960. Okay, so you should always use max width on your containers. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is just kind of style these boxes a little bit and the body. I'm just going to throw in a body style of, let's do font family, Arial, Helvetica sans serif, and then I'm just going to add a line height of 1.4 rem or m. And let's see, let's style the box class a little bit. So for box, we'll do background light gray and border 1 pixel solid dark gray, padding 20 pixels, and let's do margin bottom 15 pixels. All right, so let's take a look at that. So all of our boxes now have 20 pixels padding. They have the border, the background, and some margin to push the other ones down. So before we get into floating, I just want to look at the text align property, and that's what text align is used for. It's just text. It's not used to align boxes and stuff. So let's just target the paragraph in here. So I'm gonna say box, and then we want to grab the paragraphs within the box. Let's put a comment here saying this is for the text align property. So by default, it's aligned to the left. If I do that, it's just going to stay how it is. But let's say we wanted it aligned to the right. Whoops, we want to do text align right. And if we look at that, now the text is aligned to the right. If we want it to the center, we could do center, and it's just overwriting. I can leave these, whatever the last one is, that's going to overwrite the other ones. So now center, okay, so that was center, and that text align center is used often. And I could put text align center on the div if I wanted this, and if I wanted everything within it to be centered as well. And then we could also do justify. So justify will just make the edges all even. You can't really tell here because there's not much text, but if I make this smaller, see how it's all even on the edge? So that's justify. I'm sure you guys have used justify in like Microsoft Word or something. All right, so now I want to talk about floating. And I just want to explain something real quick. So I'm going to just do a search for HTML layout example. Go to images. Let's see. Let's look at this old Bootstrap layout. So over here we have a sidebar, and then we have a main area. Okay, so these are aligned horizontally. And then inside the main area we have some boxes that are also aligned horizontally. Now we can do this with floats, and that's what we're working on right now. But that's not the way that you should do it now, okay, these days. Because now we have Flexbox that's built into CSS. We also have CSS Grid. And to use those, we use the display property. We can say display flex or display grid. And then we have some other properties that are associated with it. And this is the way that you should do this stuff these days. A couple years ago, we would have to use floats, and floats are much more of a pain in the neck because you have to clear them. It's more of a pain dealing with responsive design, dealing with mobile devices and stuff like that. So it's not ideal anymore. But with that said, I still want you guys to know how to use floats. In fact, the project that we're going to do next, the hotel website, we are going to use floats because I don't want to get into Flex or the grid just yet. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Just keep in mind that we're learning floats, but it's not something that you're going to use that much, or that you should use that much. So let's say that we want to take box 2 and 3. We want box 2 to float to the left, come to about here or so. We want box 3 to be kind of a sidebar, a more narrow box. So let's do that. Let's jump in and let's target box 2, which has an ID of box 2. And let's say float to the left. Now if we do just that, it doesn't do much. You'll see that it's kind of put up right on top of box 3, but you want to add a width when you're floating something. So let's say width, and I could use pixels, but it gets kind of messy. You're probably going to want to use percentages. Now the container that the boxes are in is 960 pixels, okay, max width. So what we can do is let's use a percentage of 70%, and then we'll take box 3 and let's float that to the right, and let's say we want the width to be 30%, okay? Because obviously 70 and 30 is 100% of its container. So let's see what that looks like. We'll save it, we'll go back, and we have an issue. It's not fitting. Now the reason for that is because we didn't set the border box property. Remember in the last video I showed you that when you add padding, which both of these have, it adds to the width. Okay, so this is another pain in the neck for floating. It adds to the width, so we have to actually add a box sizing property on the asterisk. Okay, well we don't have to put it on the asterisk, but I always do just because I want all elements. I want this applied to everything. So let's say box sizing, we want to set to border box. So once I do that, it takes away that, it doesn't add the padding to the actual widths. So now it fits. But they're right on top of each other. So what I would do in this situation is probably just lessen the percentage. So instead of 70 for box 2, let's change it to 68 so it doesn't go all the way over. And there we go. All right, now this isn't going to look right if we make this smaller, but we're not going to get into that yet. We're not going to get into responsiveness yet. The website, the hotel website we build, we will be using media queries and stuff to make it responsive. So, I mean, this is how we would do it before Flex and CSS Grid came out. Now, I just want to show you guys that if we add another div below this, and we'll just call this box 4. Okay, so remember 2 and 3 are floated, and then box 4 is under it. So let's see what that looks like. Doesn't look right. So it's basically put behind it. It doesn't push it down under the floated elements because the floated elements have to be cleared. This is another pain in the neck when it comes to floating. So what we would do, or one thing we could do, is add a class, a utility class. I'm going to put it up here. I'll call it CLR for clear, and we'll set the clear property to both because we want to clear the left and right floats that we just created. And then we would have to put it right under where the float is, which is under 2 and 3. Okay, so div class clear. Now, if we go back, box 4 is pushed down. Okay, so remember, if you use floating, you're going to have to clear them in most cases. Now, another area that floating is used is in navigation bars. A lot of time you'll see the horizontal navigations. So in the next video, we're going to look at styling links and buttons, and we're also going to look at creating a basic navigation bar where we float the list items. All right, so I'll see you in the next video.
Living life every day, late at night, not okay. All I want, and I pray, all I need are some better days. Fuck me, I'm looking in the mirror, so foggy, but I've never seen clearer.